Welcome to ACP, the Amazon Connect podcast. This is the show that focuses on Amazon Connect and related technologies. I'm your host, Tom Morgan, and I'm joined as usual by my co-host, AWS Solution Architect and Contact Center Consultant, Alex Baker. We are also joined today by Phil Smith and Steve Mew, both from Nopaque. Find out more about Cloud Interact by visiting us at cloudinteract.io. It's time for another episode of ACP, and we are joined this week by Phil Smith and Steve Mew, both from Nopaque. Gentlemen, hello. Alex is also with me as usual. Alex, I'm very glad you're here because you know quite a bit more about Nopaque than I do at this point in time. So I'm hoping to learn, and I know you've already spoken with these fine folk a few times before.
Yeah, hi guys. Pleased to have you on, and well, I guess I don't know that much about Nopaque, so really looking forward to hearing a bit more in the next half an hour.
Let's dive in then. So, Phil, should we start with you? So, what's the kind of background that's led you to being part of Nopaque?
So I guess what happened, I'd say around the middle of my career, I started working in more senior roles. I went from networking into cloud with my good compadre, Steve. He gave me my first kind of real job in cloud computing. And from there on, I kind of progressed into a CTO position with ECS, who are now Global Logic. And while we were there, the Amazon Connect platform was released, and just everything fell into place at the right time. I was able to work with a team of about 30 or 40 people in the end to create a kind of consultancy offering. And due to their great network that they had across financial services, one of the first implementations we did was with the time they were called RBS, now NatWest, to implement Amazon Connect for their credit cards lines. So it was about 1,000 agents. And then going on from there, we won business across multiple other financial service institutions. And it meant that kind of we got into, design and build, deployment and that kind of stuff. So it was really good. And then we started talking to Barclays, and I think, they were already looking at the product. Myself and the team went in and kind of started to show them different types of architectures, different types of things that they could achieve with it. And I think somewhere in between then and then me asking to be the engineering lead for them, COVID hit. And so they kind of, jumped on to the platform and migrated about 35,000 agents in the space of 3 weeks. Because ultimately, with COVID and everybody having to stay at home, they can really take calls and service customers. And I guess in a roundabout way, where I'd been involved in the convincing them that it was the right product earlier before the head of contact center reached out and spoke to me. And then I went and did around 2 years, I think it was, with the team. So I was the head of engineering for the Amazon Connect implementation and the contact centers team in general. A lot of winding down of old technology. I think while we were there, we implemented video using Chime, but obviously quite related to what we were doing. We also implemented chat and voice ID across, all of the calls, the voice imprints that they had. Migrated out call recordings and stuff like that. So a lot of the periphery things to Amazon Connect that are needed as well, which is quite good. While I was there, I discovered that the testing of anything that you change is very important. There were a couple of minor outages, through, I wouldn't have said they were careless changes, but it's a complex system, so things go amiss now and then. And we found that we didn't really have the capacity to do as much of the testing that we needed. And I felt like the products on offer weren't really very scalable. And so it kind of came about that it was like, right, I'm sure we could do this in another way. And so that's what's brought me to Nopaque, which is now the company that we've brought into existence to kind of solve that challenge and make the testing of these platforms more flexible and on demand.
Just quickly on Barclays, Phil, do you feel like COVID accelerated the move to Connect for loads of people, I'm sure? Were Barclays kind of about to move to it pretty quickly anyway? Or was it sort of a longer term thing? What are your thoughts?
I think they would have been able to spend a little bit more time architecting if we'd not had that kind of emergency of having to get people into contact centers that could support remote workers. There wasn't the option to do it for many, many organizations, including Barclays. They just didn't have the technology. So I think they would have moved anyway, but I think it might have been done in a slightly more iterative way rather than kind of everything all at once and then have to go sort of backwards and improve parts of it.
Yeah. Yes.
Such an interesting origin story that chimes with, like, we've talked to other people as well, and that there's kind of a common theme of people doing other things and then get a little bit involved in seeing what Amazon Connect is doing and thinking, actually, this is different and exciting, and like, I need to jump on this ship because it's going somewhere. So it's kind of interesting that you had that same. I love what you said, like I guess that sentence you said about like testing is important, essentially, like, hides probably quite a few stories we should try not to get into. But so, Steve, is it the same? How about you? Like, how have you ended up here?
So my journey is it's quite a bit different. I actually started out as a pretty low level engineer in that, by background, by degree, I'm actually an electronics engineer. So I started out, hardware, and then moved up into the kernel. I started out on the OpenVMS kernel team at Digital, and a few years, a year there, and then moved into the OS team at Microsoft in Redmond to spend time on the SQL Server team. And, over the years, slowly moved up the stack from being a C++ guy real time to, .NET and all that good stuff. So I was one of the first users of .NET, so some time in the US, and then got itchy feet, went to Australia, general consultancy there, also predominantly as a dev, general business solutions. In 2010, I then moved to Malta and got involved with private equity, high speed, high frequency, low latency trading system, project. So I built a few platforms there. Malta was interesting, right? Because it's an island and we had traditional, data center infrastructure. And when you're running, a trading platform, private equity, you need the constant velocity. It's up 24/7. And the problems we had, because often project velocity would stop because you have to wait for an HP guy to come from the mainland in Italy, and that can take weeks. So the challenges around just development, infrastructure, really became apparent to me at that time. And, the best we could do at that time was, VMware. I was thinking at the time, there's got to be a better way than this. Anyway, so I did my time there. I went back to the UK. I think it must have been 2012, something like that. And my prayers were answered when I discovered the real cloud, AWS. And that's when I got involved early on as an early, joiner to CloudReach, who were the poster child, at the time for AWS. So I did some pretty interesting work there as head of data and analytics and head of ops. So lots of managed services. I think, one project that really sticks out in my mind, and this was really, for me, in my mind, the early seeds for what the Amazon AI story is now. I was working at Burberry and we built some of the early predictive models there, which is pretty good. So yeah, everything changed, infrastructure programmatic now. Everything was an ad in my mind, which is great. So so CloudReach was good. That opened up the opportunity at NordCloud, where I met this good man here. And so, I got a call out of the blue from somebody in Finland. We don't need to go into that, but they said, hey, how do you feel about building a cloud company from scratch? So I got handed a checkbook and off we went. So Phil and I built out NordCloud UK in London for the NordCloud group. And that was a great adventure. A lot of great projects there. I left. Phil became CTO there. I got tired of the British summers again. 3 winters was enough for me. Always at 4. I can't remember now. That's when we go back to Australia again. I turned an AWS partner around in Brisbane. I did that for a while. And then I went to Hong Kong and I built a bank from scratch on AWS. Just you mentioned, COVID, that was during the COVID years. Ironically, in Hong Kong, it was business as usual. One of the highest population densities in the world, but we didn't have the lockdowns and all that kind of thing like you have here. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. So did the project in Hong Kong, came back to UK with the Barclays opportunity. Thank you, Phil. It was Phil that set that one up for me. And here we are again, so our paths have crossed again. And here we are, it's, I think we've had a conversation that's overwoven through the years. We've had a lot of experience building businesses from scratch for other people. We're pretty good at, I think reading the technology landscape, how it evolves. And we're also pretty good at recognizing opportunity spaces. And so, we decided, what? Now's as good a time as any. Let's jump in. So, here we are.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. And you found like a partnership that clearly works through the years as well. So that's a really important thing as well, isn't it? So, all right. So that leads us to Nopaque. Sorry, go on, Alex.
I was just going to say, and leading on to Nopaque, it sounds like you guys have found a super interesting niche that I think it's fair to say there's not too many people are doing what you're doing. So, over to you a bit more about what does Nopaque do, first of all.
It is a fascinating time. And I think at the moment, what we've looked to do is we've bootstrapped this ourselves. We haven't taken any investment yet, and we're on the cusp of being able to land customers onto the platform through AWS Marketplace. And I think, but both of us have studied kind of startup culture, methodology, and how to get there via lean principles, that kind of stuff. And for us, really, it's a case of we have built an MVP. It does what it says on the tin. It is more simplistic than its competitors out there in the market at the moment. But one thing it does different, which is you can buy on demand. You don't have to lay down the big, money to pay for stuff that you then don't really use in an optimal way. So it kind of takes away that large budgeting that you would have to do if you wanted to do the testing. And the reason is, I think, vitally important. We see a lot of organizations that have absolutely, epic telemetry. They can tell you every little thing that's gone on inside their platform. They can show you the logs. They can do all of this, but they don't have a customer perspective. They can't tell when a customer can't do what they need to do because that doesn't come through to their telemetry often. And I think in the way we've seen, or certainly the way I've seen things happen over time, you could be the most diligent engineers and you can still make mistakes, myself included. And I think that was one of the reasons why we put this in place, because if you can trigger that as a test after you've made those changes from a customer perspective, then it's like, dotting the I, crossing the T. You can actually prove that the changes that you have made haven't impacted anything else. And I think in that sense, that being able to, point our testing tools at a telephone number, traverse the journey, and then approve or assure that journey is up and running and working, that's going to be a vital thing for things like regression testing. And if you think about an organization, let's say a larger organization that probably has componentized their contact center, if they're making a change to a quite crucial part of the system, there's a massive chance that if there is an impact, it's a much, much wider impact. And we felt like the tools that were there at the moment, you'd have to pay 10, 20, 30, 40 times as much as they're paying already to be able to get that test coverage. And so that was really what we kind of did with that. And then the other side of it was mapping, which I think Steve needs to talk about because he's the mastermind behind it.
Mapping king.
The mapping king, indeed. Emperor, wasn't it?
Emperor mapping. That's so interesting. Like, it's fascinating, actually, how you've differentiated by essentially copying the Amazon Connect playbook in how they've disrupted contact centers. You're doing the same thing in your own niche, essentially. That's really interesting. Yeah. Would you say Nopaque is a tool for development teams or kind of like contact center owners or the business, or like where do you see it fitting?
I think right now, where it stands, with its current available tools and available features, it really helps two types of teams, I guess. One team would be if you're a consultancy that's doing a lot of migration work for customers, you're helping them move from A to B, that kind of stuff. It's validating the changes that you've made. I really want to leave the mapping discussion to Steve, so I'll let him answer that side of it. And the other side of it is engineering. We heard only the other day from a potential customer that, actually they want to use the tooling to help them with an acquisition that they've made, because obviously the inbound organization that they've acquired has already got a bunch of servicing. And so when you think about engineering teams that don't really have the tools because they're too expensive, when they're making changes, they're often having to do really, really lengthy regression tests. And, that could be, for example, that they've only got the capacity to do 5 calls at once, which means they've got to then make them sequential. And so if they wanted to do 100 tests, then they're going to have to use those 5 lines divided by 5, and it's going to take forever to actually get it done, which means actually then what they do is they put further stress on the engineering teams to make manual telephone calls, so on and so forth. And you know what? We still missed things even when I was leading that engineering team, even when we did try and do everything to make sure that we've got it right. So that's really where I think it lies at the moment. For the future, though, some of the things that we're planning to do, leveraging generative AI and other stuff, it should allow us to actually start talking about the quality of the experience. If this is being measured against what humans expect from the quality of a journey, then it might be able to start introducing things like ratings, for example, and maybe a new standard that talks about how accessible it is for both vulnerable people and for people that are not vulnerable, and how well it responds to people that saying things to a voice-driven IVR, for example, whereby Like at the moment, it's just not possible to test even just all of the accents in the UK. And a lot of the events often get missed. And so really giving them a tool that broadens the ability to test all of the different accents, the different voices, whether someone's mumbling or not mumbling. I think as the ability to create voice from text evolves, we'll be able to leverage that to start really pushing the different types of tests through and start giving more kind of guidance on how well they've built and designed their journeys, how well respond to a customer that instead of saying, I've lost my card, starts talking about how they moved the sofa the other day and now they can't buy anything, and it's difficult for a machine to work that out. But I think the mapping is a great case as well for what it does. And I think Steve can.
Yeah. So mapping, what is it and why is it important? Well, one of the biggest problems is that IVR configuration documentation is often lost, out of date, never existed, and so on. It's an aspect of the IVR lifecycle that, we see and hear about on a regular basis. Keeping track of a changing IVR historically has been an aspect that doesn't get as much attention as it probably should. It's just that human condition we all have, right? Because it's perceived to be, they're self-evident, you just call it and then you know what it does, right? Or it's perceived to be slowly changing or documented inherently by the IVR system itself, right? So it's the poor cousin in the environment that often is bumped down the priority list. And so what happens is inevitably, without having an accurate map, increasing problems start to occur. As time passes, drift inevitably increases, right? You have this divergence.
I think that's so common, isn't it? We've probably all got, anecdotes of how we work with a client or sort of a business unit that they maybe just don't have anything documented and the time has passed since they put it all in. And it's really difficult to get anyone to sort of own that process of, tell us what you've got at the moment. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean,
it's so useful.
There are hundreds of stories. Right? Everybody has felt this pain in the past. You look at any large enterprise, blue chip, it's maybe, a legacy culture, and you're drowning in documentation internally on a wiki. And none of it's up to date because they just don't have the culture for that, dynamic self-documenting code or, other mechanisms, right? So, specifically to IVR mapping, because of this, calls over time, because of this drift and other secondary effects, calls get rejected or, misrouted, prompts start to fragment, break up or repeated in journeys. You get this fragmentation in the language structures, inconsistent delays, message formatting, you get overspill. How often have you gone into an IVR system, you've pressed the button and it's still giving you the broadcast from the previous, node before it actually clicks to the next node, or it gets confused and goes somewhere else for a while and then comes back. I've seen that often. So overspill is a problem. Prompts continue sometimes with lag after selections have been made. Various convoluted journeys that could be easily optimized if you've got a proper map, because you can see exactly not only what's going on with the content in the visual plane, but you can also start to see usage as well. There's a heavier, heat on the heat map down certain paths. Well, why is that? Well, we could restructure all that, right? And often people on the inside, they're too busy, right? Engineers too busy doing the day-to-day. They don't experience it at the user on
it's one of those, it seems like it works, from the outside it works, as in there are no errors, which is quite different from it works well, or it's optimal, or
but even when there are errors, right, you're usually handed a rap sheet by management saying, look, these were the complaints coming from the outside, but there's no tangible, visceral, instinctive feeling or understanding what that is really like from the customer's point of view to the engineering team. It's just the best they've got to get, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I don't think it's ever, rarely is it really proactive that people are looking at this. So I can't think of that many companies that are sort of actively calling into their lines periodically to see what the customer experience is. They probably do rely a bit on customer feedback. So something's broken, the experience isn't right. Maybe an agent gets it in the ear when they speak to the customer.
Exactly. So I think we've made some really good progress here. Market reception has been very positive. At the end of the day, how do you reset and trust your view of the system to make good design and optimization decisions, right? And migration teams love this as well. They want to trust that snapshot of, what is the workload? Okay, we trust this. And now we can, redesign the information schema and so on. The tool, so we're calling, the tool set total path. So this is the suite of not only the mapper, but obviously, load testing, and various other things which are coming down the pipe. and it's all with interactive UI. So it gives you that comprehensive view, the detailed method, data package that can be consumed by automation as well. Oh, yeah. We can output JSON, and you can, through a few small transforms, put it straight into programmatic infrastructure to spin up a new AWS Connect call center. Well, why wouldn't you, right? So, day-to-day operations faster, safer, easier, more effective. And of course, one of the key tenets of Nopaque, where, 10 years ago was about being cloud native, born in the cloud. Well, we're looking, 10 years on since then. So, I think the paradigm now is really AI native, AI, born in the cloud.
Yeah. I want to come back to AI actually, because I'm really fascinated to see how you guys are using AI and how you're thinking about AI. So I know, that's a very useful, I didn't know anything really about customer journey mapping. I didn't really sort of think about it at that level. How do you test for that stuff? How do you actually do that? We sort of touched on why it's important to do, but how is it take calls, and is it how? Yeah,
magic unicornist.
From an end user point of view, you simply put in the telephone number. It's a one-click thing, right? And I think we're, the first, to do it the way we're doing it. I don't know of any other offerings out there really quite the same. They tend to be a fragmented tool set for the most part, and you have to have a lot of interaction with it. You set up some basic parameters, you put the number in, and essentially the dialer, the mapper will just go dial, and it will just go through discovery through the whole tree structure. And so
does it kind of, you set it off with set it at an IVR, and it will go through every single branch until it reaches an outcome, and it will document every single outcome until it's got that full sort of tree of the IVR.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there is some, I think, interesting IP that we've developed in there. We can get into. We can really talk, more to that when we get into the AI questions. Do we want to go into?
Yeah, let's do it now.
No,
Absolutely, let's do it now, because this is a great. I think, how are you using AI to make that better? I guess is the
We talk about what we can do now. We're already developing the next set of features. So, for example, some of the things that we've thought about, if you give your mapping a context, so we're thinking about, context like financial services, for example, and then a secondary kind of context like credit cards, you could use generative AI to probe a voice-based IVR, because really that's, if you've got, let's just say we've had quite a bit of experience with prompting. And obviously we're seeing some good results with things where we can create, let's call them personas. And if we were to use those personas in a place like that, for example, like with testing, we can do the same kind of thing. So if I want to say, I've lost my card, I can use generative AI to create variants of I've lost my card.
Yes, which is perfect for testing.
I can sprinkle lots of things in there. We could go right to the level of I've just moved my couch and I can't make a payment, And I think where we need the evolution in the industry at the moment, because I'm not so sure that we'll do it ourselves, is what about if I want to make a voice that's angry? What if I have a voice that's fast and I want them to have a Glaswegian accent, right? Not particularly Glaswegian. It could be, Welsh or whatever. But the reality is, having seen a lot of call record, or having heard a lot of call recordings, and having seen how those intents can be missed, even when someone is actually saying something, that fits the design, that doesn't fit the demographic voice, that we start to look at using those. And so, one of the evolutions of the product would be looking at having a marketplace that would be taggable. So things like, person could be suffering from debt, or it could be, 30 to 40 in age. It could be male, female, all of these different things, and then what a person driving a test could do would be to enter some of those tags to build themselves a cohort of personas. And then as we go into the testing for that, they're given the subject matter, and then generative AI creates what it's going to say to those elements of IVR.
Yeah. So to expand on that, in the mapping context, I would say that, we have seen hallucination coming back, because this thing is crawling in real time. There are some pretty heavy computational algorithms running, it's multi-dimensional array with pointers flying around in real-time drift correction as well. So it's had its moments, I can tell you. We have seen hallucination, but it's pretty low. I would say the order of 5% for mapping. We get around this in a few different ways, right? We've had great success so far with large language models by way of, at the beginning of the interaction chain where, we found a pretty good way of constructing multiple prompts that are highly differentiated, not only in the language construction and querying, from a verbiage and noun usage and an argument point of view. So that, we write them such that they're highly differentiated, but we design them so they will hopefully bring back the same results each time. Like the space shuttle. When they designed the space shuttle, they asked 5 different manufacturers, gave them specs to build 5 different nav computers, totally different software, different algorithms, different hardware. So that when in flight, there was always a quorum decision. At least 3 machines had to agree.
Mm-hmm.
And then they took that as truth. So we do the same thing, right? So there's a quorum voting.
Okay, that's cool.
You can break the app if it suddenly hallucinates or comes back with junk. That's the first guardrail, the first boundary point, right? So essentially, you think about it in a court, right? You have bring the witness and bring him into be cross-examined. And it's the same kind of thing. So these prompts cross-examine each other. So that gives you, a lot of confidence just on the get-go, on the initial interaction with any LLM, right? And then beyond that, in post-processing, we have various guardrail mechanisms, to ensure that what has come out of the votum quorum is high quality, is meaningful and accurate within the context of the query domain. So, and going forwards, I think we're going to lean on, retrieval augmentation generation. So more specifically serverless. That's going to be key for us going forwards, where we can inject, high quality reference data and knowledge, knowledge-based material to further ensure that, it is super high accurate. And hopefully, we can take a position as, thought leaders, in this space as well, back to the wider, tapestry of being AI native and so on. So we're working very closely with Amazon right now.
I was going to say, are you guys using sort of solely the AWS tool set for this, or are you having to sort of go out into other?
No, not yet. And the simple reason for that is, we're running a very tight line between our own bootstrap finances and market product fit, right? And so when you get market product fit, there's optimizations that can be done to the platform as well. But in that sense, it's like, right, can I build it or buy it? And in that sense, it was, well, it's really cheap to buy right now. And so, as Steve said, lots of guardrails and stuff that we've got around there, but we don't believe that's the strategy for the future, because obviously you can't control what they do with their APIs. One day they might turn it off. And that's where we've also kind of engaged with Amazon on two of the new initiatives for funding and also for support, where we'd be looking at going down the route of leveraging our own foundational models in Amazon and then building on the top of those instead, rather than relying on a third party.
So we are using third-party LLMs at the moment. It wouldn't probably come as any great surprise to you that one of them is ChatGPT. But obviously, we're in early conversation with Amazon. We're looking at the AI, competency paths, and we're looking at Bedrock. And then we can bring it, more in-house and get into, augmented injection and things like this. And when you make it serverless and it's in-house, then, your cost optimizations are an order of magnitude for sure.
Yeah. It sounds like there's a whole episode of a podcast here just around what you guys are doing with Gen AI. It's really interesting stuff.
It is. We should stop talking really, but I just want to get this one last question in quick. So go for a quick answer. What is there anything on your wish list for Amazon Connect that you are kind of like hassling the team to put in, or something that would really help, or just stuff is coming?
I mean, they've done it in the last few weeks. I'm not aware of, but one of the things, obviously, when we're building out the UIs, we're got a lot of data flying around in APIs and in DynamoDB, that kind of stuff, and we've managed to create call reports, but there's obviously the ability to get them from Lens and stuff. But when I did that, and it was like, oh, the audio's not there. Well, that was pointless, wasn't there? Because that was the main thing I wanted, right? So having it where you can just extract out the call, because when you think about what we're doing this totally the wrong way around for Amazon. Not a contact center, but we're using Amazon Connect as an outbound, like carrier dial or whatever you want to call it, that enables us to do the things that we do. And obviously then with those background tools, which are geared very much for contact centers, it'd be really nice if we could just hit that API and extract the whole thing, and then we can or store it elsewhere, disseminate it and present it onto the URL.
Yeah, that's interesting. Excellent. All right. We should stop talking because we're completely at time. It is time to bring this episode to an end. Thank you, gentlemen, very, very much. It's been really, really interesting. And as Alex says, there's probably a whole other episode in there somewhere talking just about the AI story. So that's really interesting. Thank you very much, Alex. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast player. That way you won't miss it. Whilst you're there, we'd love it if you would rate and review us. And as a new podcast, if you have colleagues that you think would benefit from this content, please let them know. To find out more about how Cloud Interact can help you on your contact center journey, visit cloudinteract.io. We're wrapping this call up now, and we'll connect with you next time.